Thank you all so much for coming out today. This is amazing. It's my first time here in London, and the whole experience has been super exciting. Yeah, as Eleanor said, you might be familiar with some of my comic work. I primarily work in comics, but I also do some illustration. My creator-owned comics, Long Lost and Submerged, you might be familiar with. But yeah, the Modern Witch Tarot deck kind of came together a few years ago. I had first designed the Ten of Swords. Didn't really think that I was going to do a deck at that point, but the response that I got kind of blew me away. It communicated in a way that my art had never really successfully communicated before, and so I started listening, and I realized that there was a demand for what I was doing, and a tarot deck that was in line with that, and that kind of led me down the path of creating a deck that is feminist, inclusive, diverse, and those were kind of my guiding principles in creating the entire deck. So, yeah, I'm happy to talk to you all today about the Modern Witch.
Thank you. So this is actually the version of the Ten of Swords that Lisa created, first of all. So it's got a lady lying down, holding a phone, punctured by the 10 swords, and the caption is, "Everything is fine." Now, I don't know about you, but certainly for me, this is how I finish every day. So this definitely resonated with a lot of people. You originally posted it online. Was it just on your Tumblr?
Yeah, I think Tumblr was the first place that I posted it. I was using social media as much as I could back then, and it kind of blew up in a huge way. Totally out of the blue, totally unexpected, and it's actually a funny story because as positive as that response to that card has been, it actually came from a kind of unfortunate place. That card design was born out of a time in my life that I was working this kind of dead-end design job right after college. I'd been there for a few years. I was doing the same thing 9 to 5 every single day, designing t-shirt after t-shirt after t-shirt, and I was starting to get totally burnt out. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my art. I didn't know what direction I should take in my career, and I was kind of flailing and a little bit depressed. And for some reason or another, I don't know, some cosmic force, the Ten of Swords popped into my head on one really particularly dark day, and it was the Rider-Waite version, and I hadn't even really been reading tarot as regularly then in my life, but that card came out of the blue, and I already had kind of the entire idea for my design already there, which doesn't happen for me very often at all. Creativity for me can be a kind of painful process. It's a long, arduous, task of, watching movies, reading books, reading comics, looking at art, and jotting ideas down, ditching ideas. That's usually the way art making goes for me, is very, very long, but the Ten of Swords just popped in there. The image, fully formed, of this girl lying on her side, 10 swords pierced through her, bloodied on this cold crystalline ground, looking at her phone. Everything is fine, and I actually think there's a few different ways to interpret this card, which I really love, but the way that I was feeling when I created this was that I was, that feeling of like scrolling through Twitter and like getting so just depressed and just having to stop and tell yourself, okay, it'll be fine, and just keeping it as like a mantra to just keep yourself going and get back up.
I think it's something that really resonated with a lot of people, which is why this kind of took off. So it kind of went viral. It got tens of thousands of notes on Tumblr, it took off on Twitter as well. So how did you get from there to creating a whole deck?
So it actually was a pretty long process. I think I first posted that card back in 2015.
Wow.
And since it was kind of what I felt like, I kind of got myself into this mindset. I was like, oh, this is just like a one-hit wonder. Like, I'm never going to be able to create an entire deck. What would that even look like? Because I had that one idea. And I wasn't really planning on doing a whole deck at the time. But instead of stressing myself out about it, I just kind of waited, and I lived my life, and I read things, and I talked to people, and I experienced things, and eventually the idea for the deck just kind of came to me naturally. And after about 2 years, honestly, I felt I was ready to start making more cards. And the purest, simplest form of inspiration for the deck was the fact that the witches that I knew wanted to see themselves represented within their decks, and they wanted a deck that felt like it looked like them and the people that they love and the people that they practice witchcraft with and the people that are in their coven and support them. And so that was the basis of the whole deck, as I just wanted as much diversity as I possibly could in 78 cards, and that was the goal.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love that about the deck. When I first got it, when I was looking through it, it was just such a lovely, quiet, but really profound moment of, oh man, this is me, this is my friends. I'd never seen a tarot deck that had actually reflected my sort of reality of life before, and it's so body positive, and it even includes body hair, which I think the original Rider-Waite doesn't, which is incredible.
It does, the star, yep.
Yeah,
that was our little
exactly.
touch. I was like,
yeah. So you integrated a lot of modern technology into the deck. I mean, obviously you've got the phone on the Everything is Fine Ten of Swords. The Fool is also listening to an iPod as she dances off the cliff, which I really enjoy. What was your thinking behind this? Do the pieces of tech do they change the meaning of the cards? Do they inform the reading in any way?
I tried not to alter or change drastically the meaning of the kind of like the most understood meanings of any of the cards in any big way. My thinking as far as including these pieces of tech is that, you know, if I wanted to depict modern life, like cell phones, laptops, headphones, that kind of stuff is so ingrained in our daily lives, and to feel like a true reflection of right now, I felt that I had to include it. But as far as like specifics, I think that there were a few cards that it actually maybe enhanced the meaning a bit, or at least went a direction that I thought was cool. Like the Hermit, she's got a laptop.
Yeah, she's got a laptop instead of a lamp, which
Yes.
which I was actually going to ask you about. So
Yeah.
she's inside as well instead of the original Hermit is outside.
Yeah.
So what's kind of the thinking?
So I really like this one because I can the way that I thought about it is that you can kind of interpret the laptop in two different ways. So if the Hermit is all about like, you know, reclusion and looking inwards and, you know, separating yourself from otherworldly distractions and maybe society and withdrawing in order to, you know, search within, then I think the laptop can be both a symbol of maybe turning off social media or, you know, closing laptop and turning away from Twitter and like turning off all of those distractions in order to really focus on yourself. Or since it's also like, you know, the internet is a place where there's all the knowledge in the world, then it could also be a tool to kind of unlock more wisdom. So I kind of like that you can kind of look at it both ways.
Yeah.
She could either be opening it or closing it. And
Yeah, the position of her hand definitely looks like she's kind of closing. And it kind of almost puts a positive spin on what is a pretty ambiguous card with the Hermit. We've also got the tablet in the Eight of Pentacles, which is your kind of like self-insert
Yeah.
into the deck. So this is Lisa right here.
working away.
So why did you choose the Eight of Pentacles to be your signifier?
So I wasn't originally planning on putting myself in the deck in any way, but as I was kind of going through the process of, you know, really studying the cards and their meanings and reading different people's opinions on, you know, the traditional symbolism, I felt like this card was just really spoke to me, because it's all about like mastering a craft and putting your head down and really dedicating yourself to finishing a task, and it might be long and arduous, but if you focus and you dedicate yourself to it, then you could create something amazing. And that's kind of what making the tarot deck felt like, of like 78 cards was a lot to do. And when I first started the project, I was like, how am I ever going to be able to get to the end of this? This is so much, and there's so much complicated symbolism to like tease out and keep in mind, and so many different factors going on. But in the end, and actually the Pentacles I believe was the last suit that I ended up working on. So by that point I was already like over halfway done with the deck, and I was like, you know what, maybe I'll put a little nod to the hard work that I put into this. And
it's very meta. It's you creating the deck, which is lovely. While a lot of the cards in your deck are very much they're they are very, very similar to the Rider-Waite. There are some that are really different, and one of them is the Three of Pentacles. Is pretty different to its kind of original position. You've got someone standing sort of like as a life model and being drawn, instead of people sort of like erecting like a church and engraving things on it. Which is kind of thematically, you can see the similarities, but I'd love to know kind of what this card means to you and why the difference.
Yeah, when I was thinking about the original Three of Pentacles and looking at the Rider-Waite version, the cathedral, the priest, the architect, the nobleman, I liked the idea of it, of course, the concept of, like, teamwork and harmony and building something together and, like, you know, building off each other's skills, in order to create something, but the church doesn't really resonate with me, and I thought that I kind of wanted to honestly keep, you know, religious symbols out of the deck, so I thought that setting it in a art school kind of setting of the professor, the student, the model, the muse, the professor, and the muse, the mentor, and the mentee was a nice way to kind of shift it, but still retain that original meaning of just like working together and the teamwork between these three parties.
Yeah.
So
it must be something that kind of resonates with you as well because you're an artist. And
yeah,
this is a scene that you've kind of experienced yourself.
Yeah, it's impossible not to put yourself and your own experiences into your work. It just informs it every day. So.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the real like strengths of this deck is that the tarot is supposed to represent life. It's very symbolic, yes, but life has changed an awful lot since the Rider-Waite was first created. So it's really nice to see in the Modern Witch scenes that would be more familiar to us in modern day, and that one is really fantastic. Now. All of the cards have, or almost all the cards in your deck have figures on, including the Eight of Wands, which doesn't in the original Rider-Waite. It's got a little person on a motorbike speeding along, which I think is really cool. So why did you choose to add this in?
So one of the things that I think was most challenging about making the Modern Witch tarot was the fact that I love the Rider-Waite, and I love the compositions, and I love the kind of archetypal, easy to read symbols. I love the color palette. It's always really spoken to me, and I think there's a reason why it has persisted for so long. But I wanted to use it as a framework and a basis, just because I love it so much. But I also wanted to put as much of my own creative vision and my own ideas into it as I could without shifting the meaning too much. So any place that I felt like I could put a little spin on it that would not do too much to alter the meaning but would enhance it, I tried to do that. So if I understand like the that card to be about travel and movement, then a speeding person on a motorcycle racing towards some unknown destination seemed like a natural addition.
Yeah,
so.
And it's something that isn't present in the original, so this deck isn't just kind of a reboot, it does have its own kind of meanings. And speaking of the figures on the cards, so you made the choice to have only women and non-binary people in the Modern Witch, and I think you've already had some criticisms for that, or at least some comments.
Yeah.
People have wondered whether that alters like the masculine and feminine energies that are supposed to be present in the tarot. How would you respond to those comments?
I would respond with the fact that, you know, gender is a construct, and people of all kinds can have both masculine and feminine energy and dress in both masculine or feminine ways regardless of gender. So, you know, the cards that are supposed to have the more masculine energy, I did choose for the most part to use fashion that reflected that, but without really limiting myself to this card doesn't have to be a man, so this person can be anybody. So that. I don't think it alters the meanings at all.
No,
so.
I mean,
yeah.
I'm biased, but I don't think so either. I think that there is, when we talk about masculinity and femininity, there are plenty of things beyond just sort of what we see as biological sex that are masculine and feminine. I think all of that is very much embodied within the tarot. Would you say that the meanings for each card are different drastically from the Rider-Waite, or do they mostly follow along in the same way?
I definitely tried to keep the meanings similar as much as I could, while still modernizing it. I would say that, yeah, if you're familiar with the Rider-Waite system, I would say that it probably isn't too much of a leap that the modern witch will be an easy transition. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And what does like modern witchcraft mean to you, and how did you kind of like put that into the deck?
I think it really comes down to, honestly, the concept of a coven has always been super inspiring and amazing to me. Just this idea that you can have this group of people that are powerful on their own, in their own right, but together you can support each other, look up to each other, admire each other, love each other, and together create magic. And so when it came to the Modern Witch Tarot, and when it comes to witchcraft and feminism, I really, I want the deck to feel like these characters and everyone in the deck could be members of your coven. And just to tie that all in of feminism, witchcraft, covens, womanhood, community. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's very much within the deck itself, and it shows a real kind of love and understanding of what the tarot is. So has tarot been part of your life for very long? How did you kind of get into it? And do you have a favorite deck?
Well, Rider-Waite is probably my favorite, but I just recently picked up Bad Girl Tarot, which I don't know if you've ever seen. It's great, by Katie Scalia is the illustrator. But I've been into tarot since college. I think I got into a little bit later. I've always loved witches and witch stories and witch characters in fiction, but and I did have for a brief period of time as a teen, experiment with the Book of Shadows, but tarot really became a part of my life in college. I had a couple friends actually that were into it, that newer friends that did a reading for me, and I immediately fell in love and just felt I saw it as an amazing opportunity to stop and self-reflect and really examine my choices or my feelings or my thoughts, because so much of our lives can be go 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 and do 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 and anxiety ridden and all about movement, but I love that tarot is an opportunity to just kind of stop the cycle for a second and really examine yourself and what you're doing with your life, and hopefully find answers and clarity and a path. So, yeah.
Yeah, and having something that is more reflecting upon life really helps. I mean, sometimes you want to get back to the symbology, but sometimes you want to just be told to close your laptop, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep.
So would you ever create another deck?
I hadn't really thought about it, because it was amazing in the first place that people would want a tarot deck of my art. It still blows me away, and feels unbelievable. I think if I ever were to do another deck, I think I would love to team up with a tarot reader and create a new system and a new set of symbols, and really take the time to just delve into the meanings and different ways to portray everything. And just create an entirely new thing. But I feel like it'd probably have to be a couple years separated from the Modern Witch, just because that's still so much ingrained within me. I don't know if I could just make another Three of Wands out of nowhere without having that influence creep back in.
That would be so cool, though. I think that I love the Rider-Waite system, and you've also got the Thoth and the Marseille and the Normand. But we need some new systems. We need some more kind of some symbols in there.
Well, I have a graphic novel coming out in, I believe, not next year, 2021. It's by Green Willow Books. It is a young adult, teen girl werewolf story. So it'll be really fun and full of horror and also cute clothes, because I just love fashion. So, I'm literally working on that till, all of this year, most of next year, and then who knows after that. So.
We'll be sure to keep a lookout for that.
It's called The Squad.
Right.
I forgot to mention the name.
Might help. Okay, so we're going to open up the floor. Does anyone have a question for Lisa?
I've got a question about the world card. Why did you pick the signs you picked? I know, like, elements, obviously, but the specific signs that you picked, astro signs in those orders.
Yeah, I believe with the original Rider-Waite card, I picked the astrological signs, but the figures that were in the original corners are the same symbols. Okay. So it's just I just chose to depict it a different way. So, yeah.
Yeah, over there.
You had 2 Ten of Swords cards in the deck. I really like that. And then the first pencil was everything is fine.
Yeah.
Could you kind of...
Oh yeah. So the reason why there's 2 is because the original version of the Ten of Swords that I did that had the caption "Everything is fine" is kind of the thing that, you know, took off that particular version and kind of sparked the idea for the whole deck. So I wanted to include it because everyone seemed to love it so much with the words, but I also wanted to leave the regular Ten of Swords version in so people could kind of choose which one they wanted within their deck. Or you know, could live dangerously and have 2 Tens of Swords in your deck at all times and double the chance of getting that one. So, yeah.
You see the original one first. Looking at it and everything is fine came up.
Yeah.
Is everything fine, though?
I like that.
Any more questions? Yeah.
So, you've put yourself in one of the cards. Have you put your friends that you know in the others?
I actually haven't.
So it's not anyone that you know that
No,
have inspired?
I think it's mainly because, I mean, a lot of details I would say are very much inspired by people that I know, like their fashions, their outfits, their energies, but I decided not to, other than myself, like put anyone in particular in there. Mainly just because I just love creating new characters so much. It's one of my favorite things to do. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you have any synchronicities when you actually created them? Like, for example, you've depicted yourself in one of them. There's other things that, like the Ten of Swords, I presume, was your life at that time.
Yeah.
Is there any other things which? It's like Grant Morrison. He created the Invisibles.
Yes.
And he basically, his whole life is based on that. He created his own life out of the comic.
Mm-hmm.
Did that happen to you?
I can't say for sure yet, but who knows what could happen. Maybe I will start noticing it as time goes by. Yeah.
Scenes from the cards will just manifest.
Oh, yeah, that would be
Regular life.
insane. Yeah. So yeah, not so far, but you never know.
Any more questions? Yep.
You said you're quite familiar with the original deck, and so I imagine like as you've probably developed like a pretty good relationship with it, and like kind of like a dialogue between it. And have you found like with your own deck, have you had any like sort of surprises as to how it speaks back to you? Does that make sense?
It's actually really weird reading with the deck for myself because it's just like. It almost feels like I'm talking to myself because I'll even like. If I need to refresh my memory on a certain card, it is really bizarre to look into the guidebook and look at my own words that I've written that I'm reading back to myself, and I was like, this is wild. So it is very strange. I will say I think it's the first time this deck that I felt in my creative and artistic life that I've kind of stumbled into a style and a way of communicating and creating art and color palettes, and like everything felt like it worked together in a really painless and easy and natural way. So whenever I read with that deck, it just feels natural. It feels like me. So it's very positive. Yeah, to sum it up.
So I have one more question. In regards to the design of your deck, is it just purely artistic imagination, or did you use reading on astrology, or because each one of them is associated with demons, angels,
Yeah.
whatever the case
Oh
is.
yeah,
There's
I
different
did.
layers.
I did a lot of research into each card and kind of what all the original symbol. I did a lot of research on the original Rider-Waite-Smith, on like why is this figure here? Why are they holding this? And like made sure I knew like why each element was in each card. So when I got to the point of like changing things around and shifting symbols, like I at least was aware of what I was doing. I wanted to really deeply understand the cards for sure. And as far as like the design of one of the things that I had a lot of fun with actually was picking the color palette, because the Rider-Waite-Smith color palette is very primary based, like red, yellow, blue are like the main colors throughout the whole deck. So it was super fun to figure out a color palette that was bright and also had a lot of repeating themes. So whatever spread you do, the goal was to have everything aesthetically look like it all tied together. Another fun thing I did was each of the minor arcana has its own separate color scheme. So you could pick up the cups and already know that it's the cups because there's a lot of blues and pinks and teals, or the wands have a lot of golds and yellows and reds. So that was a super fun part to work on. A little tricky sometimes because some cards like I had trouble fitting into the scheme. I think the Lovers was one that I struggled with back and forth on forever because I was like, these colors aren't working with the rest of the major arcana, but figured it out eventually. Yeah.
That's what pulled me to the deck, is because your colours are so beautiful.
Thank you. Thank
very
you so
nice.
much.
Stand out beautifully.
Yeah.
So unless we have any more questions, I have a bonus question,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like it's been staring me in the face the whole time. So why did you choose to only have women and non-binary people in this deck?
I mean, I love women. I want to support and empower and inspire women. I want to create a deck for them to see themselves in. And, I mean, on a purely basic level, I love drawing women more than men. But I did just want to focus on that experience and what it is to be a woman or a non-binary person or queer or whatever. I wanted to focus on that aspect of life within tarot.
Yeah. I mean, it was really lovely to see like the Lovers card actually be a queer card instead of just
Oh yeah,
you know, just like a straight
yes,
couple.
yeah.
So yeah, I think that just about wraps it up. Just as like a personal note, thank you so much for creating this deck. I think it's really wonderful. It's a beautiful addition to the cornucopia and kaleidoscope of tarot, and I think that Pamela Coleman Smith would be proud. So thank you very much.
Thank you.